Listen-only mode.
Hi, good morning everyone, and thank you for joining me courtesy of the Muscle Club for this short webinar aimed at exploring the advantages of co-working and trying to encourage more of it. I offered to deliver a webinar on this subject because co-working started to be talked about more and more as a must-do for personal and business development among some circles. Co-working started to get ahead of steam in the US over the last few years, and it's now starting to take hold in the UK as well. A recent article in The Guardian talked about the co-workers revolution, but in reality, irrespective of its growing popularity, it's also one of those areas that really could pass you by, and you'd probably never miss it. But by getting involved now and again, you could really improve yourself and your business. Just a couple of qualifiers before I get started. First, although I'm going to have a particular focus today on freelancers and generally people who run their own businesses from home, in reality I'd say co-working is good for anyone, in businesses large or small, whether they're employees or business owners, and hopefully by the end of this session you'll agree with that. Secondly, and as importantly I think, although I'll refer to co-working spaces later, because finding somewhere to do co-working is obviously an essential part of the mix, I'd like to focus more initially on why co-working is good for business, so the act of co-working, focusing really on the people aspects rather than the place. So first of all, a quick introduction. I'm director and founder of Space on Tap. My name's Jane Graham. Space on Tap was established almost a year ago now, and it does what it says on the tin. It discovers and promotes spaces that are available on tap. We also run Colleagues on Tap, which is essentially developing as a network of people that usually work alone, who come together to work in one of our pop-up offices around the northeast now and again, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. I've worked exclusively from home for about 8 years, but since the early 90s during my corporate career I adopted a flexible approach to working, which included occasional home working days, as many people do. So I have worked from home for quite a long time. And Space on Tap is also a home-based business. There are 3 of us in total at the moment, and we all work from home. Okay, so let's talk co-working. I'm going to start here with an assumption that everyone participating today has at some time or another, past or present, experienced co-working. That is, you've worked at some time or another in a traditional business structure with more than one member of staff who are based in an office, workshop, factory, shop or wherever. As a co-worker, you've worked alongside colleagues who were doing either the same job as you or maybe a complementary job. Each of you will have had your own area of specialism, your own area of knowledge, responsibilities and networks, and your work, you work within reasonably close proximity of each other. Maybe have lunch together, have chats before and after meetings, and not to mention the really juicy stuff that often gets said in the car park before and after work. The community that you would have been in wouldn't have always, as it has to be said, operated in complete harmony, but in general, as members of a team, the people within it would have added value to each other. So really, in the broadest sense of the word, you can all recognise what co-working is. So traditional workplaces, the places themselves, provide a great platform for people to connect with their co-workers. These interactions can be highly valuable in personal and business development terms. Those chats over coffee can stimulate creativity, light bulb moments, or pull some energy behind an idea that's been burning inside you but you've never talked about until now. Chance exchanges can result in knowledge exchange, in particular finding out things that you didn't know that you didn't know. New connections, or social capital as it's called, can evolve rapidly through meeting new people, no matter how loose the ties are. It's quoted that you're only about 7 people away from connecting with everyone in the world. It has to be said, though, that the value of co-working in a traditional workplace is to a great extent taken for granted. It isn't necessarily even recognised, although most people do benefit from it in one way or another, as does the business or organisation. So it's not surprising really that when people choose to work at home or on their own, by moving away from that traditional workplace structure, they might recognise the loss of camaraderie and a bit of crack, but they don't necessarily also recognise that they're losing what goes alongside this, the opportunity for co-working as a stimulant of creativity, of knowledge exchange and of new connections. And that's definitely not good for business. I'm going to quote Brad Newberg, a developer advocate at Google, who prior to working for Google apparently opened a co-working space called the Hat Factory in the US. He put the problem in a nutshell when he told the Times, I could either have a job which would give me structure and community, or I could be freelance and have freedom and independence. Why couldn't I have both? So how can you have both? Like me, many people simply prefer to work from home. It's now becoming the chosen model for business establishment and more recently also for business growth. Home businesses are now starting to get beyond I just work from home, a phrase I've heard a lot of times over the years, or, well, I didn't really want an office, but I decided to lease one so people could take me seriously. Something that, as someone said to me a few weeks ago. People who work at home often aspire to grow their business from home. This is now viable, and it's no longer the just until I can afford it solution. There are loads of benefits obviously associated with working from home, not least it's cost effective, it's flexible, family and life friendly and green. I don't want to drown you in statistics, but suffice to say that over 3.7 million people in the UK work from home, according to the Labour Force survey of 2009, and 2/3 of those were self-employed people, with a 42% increase reported since 2001. And that trend is expected to rise even more sharply in the 2011 Labour Force survey. So home working must have something going for it. That said, it's also been well documented that working from home long term can cause isolation. And that doesn't mean loneliness. It means your business is isolated from other businesses and you're isolated from other business people. So those chance discussions then become more scarce, and the opportunity to find out about new products or services or resources that could make your life easier and your business better become more difficult because you're so busy working in the business day to day. One obvious way of avoiding isolation is simply to move out of the home office. And some people do that just because they've tried home working and accept that it just isn't for them. But if the alternative to home working is to set up an office and work on your own until you've grown in numbers, ultimately the same potential isolation can exist, with the added difficulty of increasing your cost base in the meantime. So what's the solution? Co-working can provide a solution to both of these problems, providing a great way to create new connections, to share knowledge and stimulate creativity, and also, in the case of co-working spaces, provide a more cost-efficient and effective alternative to working from home. So how do you get started on co-working? Well, first of all, technology has significantly removed an element of isolation experienced while working from home. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, for example, as well as online networks like the Muscle Club, are packed full of knowledge, connections and creativity. And if you ask for help, you're pretty much assured of getting it. I'm sometimes really overwhelmed by the support we've received from complete strangers through social media. But you can't know what you don't know, and sometimes you don't really want to tell the world about your questions, concerns, fears, greatest ideas and so on online. So those face-to-face interactions are also really important. And that's where physical co-working comes in. By recreating a traditional workplace, working alongside other people, either just occasionally or on a permanent basis, some you know, some you don't, some are working in the same sector as you and some aren't, some are employees of other organisations and some work for themselves. So where can you do that? First of all, this is more than a coffee shop experience. I don't know about you, but if I work in a coffee shop, I don't tend to chat to the person next to me who's working on a laptop. So that's where co-working spaces come in. Co-working spaces have started to emerge, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Essentially what the successful ones seem to have in common isn't the posh furniture or funky decor. Many don't have that. And although it has to be said, good coffee is pretty much essential, and as is good Wi-Fi. What makes co-working spaces work is that they have people who use them, and those people form a co-working community who add value to each other's businesses for no other reason than just because they can. I'm delighted to be able to tell you about a couple of co-working spaces that have now started to emerge in the North East. Here are a couple of examples. Nest in Barnard Castle is a creative and digital work hub and gallery, and it launched in 2010. You can use this space as a member or on a pay-as-you-go basis, and Nest have actually teamed up also with Digital City to create a supportive environment, in particular for people working in the digital and creative sectors, although of course anyone's welcome there. Another is Newcastle Business Hub, which is run by Newcastle Business Village in Benton, North Tyneside. This hub relaunched itself in May 2011. And it's a great place with good facilities, great coffee, and a lot of support from the people within the business village, but also the people who run the hub. The owners are very keen to support businesses to make new connections and to talk through business issues and provide support as required. We're aware of other spaces that are in the planning stage at the moment, and Space on Tap is really keen to work with you to identify co-working spaces that are convenient and right for you, but also to encourage people who have space in your area to transform them into co-working spaces that you can use. So if you want to try co-working, get in touch. If you don't know where to go, ask. We may not know the perfect places yet, however we can approach spaces, people who are running spaces that might make appropriate co-working places, and help them to actually form a community which you would benefit from. In the meantime, if you'd like to try out co-working, there's also Colleagues on Tap. Just proving that it's more about the people than the place, Space on Tap introduced Colleagues on Tap co-working days last year, and we now run co-working events every few weeks around the region. In what we call our pop-up offices, we create a co-working environment for the day for up to 12 people at a time. We've held over a dozen successful co-working days so far in all sorts of places, including a hotel, a cinema, an art gallery, a library, and various business centres, and we've also run events at the co-working spaces I referred to earlier. Co-workers have fed back to us that Colleagues on Tap days have been successful for them in many ways, including stimulating creativity, knowledge and connections, as well as providing a well-needed change of scene. I already mentioned cabin fever earlier. If you'd like to find out more or hear more from our co-workers themselves, you can go to our co-working blog, which is Colleagues on Tap, www.colleaguesontap.blogspot.com, or the Space on Tap channel on YouTube, or news articles on spaceontap.com, where you'll find video blogs from our past co-workers and more information about Colleagues on Tap. Our next co-working day and last before the summer break is Wednesday 15th of June, and then we have a schedule in our co-working calendar beyond that from September. A couple of final thoughts when it comes to co-working. Co-working isn't just the domain of home-based or smaller businesses. All organisations can get something out of co-working. Just imagine in a large organisation shuffling your teams and departments for a week or even a day, and see what they gain in terms of new knowledge, new connections and some creativity. Co-working doesn't need a crowd of people to work effectively either. Smaller numbers are just as effective. Co-working, finally, isn't instead of working. It's co-working. Co-working is working within a community. 90% of co-workers who attend our Colleagues on Tap co-working days report that they get as much, if not more, work done as they do at home. So, thank you for listening. And if you would like to experience or find more information about co-working, you'd like to co-work with us, or you have space that you think could make a great co-working space, please get in touch. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.